Labra fóir scach ní go sóil Sgamar de slione gui suspir Vivian go glór
Really lovely to see you all gathered here, in deep respect to those who have catalyzed this process of communities gathering. And it's something that has been mirrored across the country over the past 6 months of communities, large and small, gathering and bearing witness, not only to the horror of this moment, but also to the potentiality of it vis-a-vis community and unity and compassion and empathy, and a committed clarity in terms of the lens that it seems has quite effectively shifted over the past few months of recognition of the necessity for us all to carry the parts of this that we can. I'm going to focus specifically on personal witness just for the next few minutes, having lived and worked in Gaza and in Jenin in the West Bank, and having spent a couple of decades engaging with community and grassroots work in Palestinian refugee camps in Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq. And part of that witness, particularly in Gaza, was of not only some of what we're seeing now, which is the grief and the trauma and the heaviness of this moment, of the intergenerational loss that we're all watching through these pixelated images, you know, in a way, the isolation of our phones, which is why it is so important for these types of gatherings to take place as the antidote to that. But what I've also witnessed in Gaza and in Jenin and other contexts has been the profound courage and tenderness of those on the front line. And I think so much of the work, if we think of the over 750 Palestinian healthcare workers who have been killed or injured with life-changing injuries in Gaza over the past 6 months, if we think of their colleagues who have been systematically and deliberately targeted over the last decades in the West Bank. But what's important to remember within the targeting of the hundreds of healthcare facilities, hospitals, first aid clinics, neonatal support structures, over 187 ambulances, that within that the work, that witness, and that frontline response is continuing. And one thing that is hard to get a sense of, perhaps through this shrunken, contracted space of our phones, is the courage, yes, that we've seen, but is also the tenderness. There is so much love in the care, in that sacred care work, in the caring of the wounded and those who could not be saved. And within that, I think as we gather in these spaces of community, if the biggest form of solidarity, I think, or one of the most potent forms of solidarity, as well as this showing up, as well as the advocacy, the political action, the fundraising, the organizing, but is also to bear witness to the fact that there is so much beauty in Gaza. And as somebody, you know, who has watched, in a way, these images just of rubble, of grayness, of grief, of mourning, of keening. I feel the immense privilege of also holding those memories of time spent there, of the community, of the sea, very similar and different to this one, but people's relationship with the sea in Gaza is very deep. So I have memories of waking up at dawn to the sound of fisher people going down to fish, and oftentimes them singing these old folklore songs that are related to the sea, by Marcel Khalifa and many others. I remember the families and their hospitality. I was chatting with Fiona earlier on this morning about dabke, about Palestinian traditional dance, about food, music, culture, and care. And what we can do in this bearing of witness is to keep that freedom space internally, vibrant and strong and flowing. Because when we contract into this space of only responding from grief and not from that mutual respect or that potentiality of broad expanse of freedom, I think in a way we unintentionally do disservice to the people that we are trying to accompany on their long, painful walk to freedom. And by doing so also, we say that we see them in the complexity and the entirety of their humanity, not just in their suffering, not just as victims, but also as very brave and very caring survivors. And finally, because I don't want this to be a monologue, but one analogy or one metaphor that I've been holding in my own mind over the past few months of this organizing has been that of lighthouses. And I think some of the lighthouses that are gathered here today, all of you under this size, and the fact that you made this with so much care and beauty, and that even with the little sign of the donkey, that we're all here in this space in a way, that really speaks so much. But there are lighthouses, even in the times. I know particularly I was chatting with Noni before this about Mothers Against Genocide and some of the groups that have come together and the grief that they are carrying, the grief that we are all carrying throughout this witness. But to think that there are so many lighthouses throughout the world beaming to each other, the lighthouses from island of humanity to island of humanity, of Jewish American young activists in the States who are blockading and dissenting and chaining themselves to edifices of power and refusing for this to be done in the name of their people, of their rich religious tradition. That there are Palestinian Americans and Palestinians in the diaspora throughout the world who are holding the memories of their people and the beauty of their people as well, and who are educating us to think broader than just this grief. Of Mothers Against Genocide, of people who are dissenting in the streets and turning up week after week after week. So I would say within the storms of this, when the heaviness of this night of oppression can seem overwhelming, to recognize that there are millions of people throughout the planet who are refusing for this to be perpetuated in their names, and for refusing this to become a norm or a status quo where the powerful, can get away with negating and bulldozing the most basic of human rights, the most basic of justices that people can access. So to hold courage, to hold heart, and to always remember that even in these smaller gatherings, that people in Gaza are watching us in the same way that we are watching them, and that this is what keeps them grounded and anchored in hope. It is this sense that they are not alone. It is this sense of solidarity and community and compassion and love. And just to keep that held with mindfulness, with care, with courage, and to recognize that we are many. Even when it doesn't feel it, we are the majority, the people who are saying that this is wrong, and that this is not being done either in their names or in the names of those who follow, of those who come after, who hopefully all of you will build a world that is a lot more just, a lot more courageous, and a lot more compassionate than this historical moment that we're presently in. So thank you and well done. And Palestine Hora.
Síl go léir, hín uair mar flá.